What's up, everyone? It's your boy Rock Clever. This is my next video. This video is very loaded, so it's a lot of topics I have to hit them fast. I know that I tend to ramble, so I'm gonna try to do this as quick as possible. As you see, I kind of changed location. I'm still in my room, but I'm in a different corner of my room. For some reason, where I was at in the room, the lighting was just jacked, so I just couldn't, be seen as clearly as I like to be seen. So anyhow, this video is all about the whole Paula Deen scandal. DOMA being repealed and parts of the Voting Rights Act being repealed in the constitutional amendments. First, let's talk about Paula Deen. Now, a lot of people feel some kind of way about Paula Deen and the comment that she said about, the N-word, the plantation-style wedding. She said a lot of things. There's also footage that I saw as well of her. She has a black person helping her, I guess, in her entourage or whatever. And the comments that were made could be taken as very offensively. You can feel in the audience it wasn't that's too much. But that was in 2012. Basically, in the affidavit, Paula Deen admitted that she has said racial comments towards African Americans, and not just African Americans, just racial comments in general. For a while, the story broke kind of slowly, and people kind of dismissed her already. And not saying that I'm at all on Paula Deen's side for what was said, but my issue is that the statements that were said were statements that she said years ago. And at that, 30 years ago, you have to understand the climate of the South in the 80s. People were still using the N-word like it was anything. Just to play slight devil's advocate on the issue, not at all, dismissing Paula Deen's actions, but it was indicative of the time and the space that she grew up in, and is indicative of the area that she grew up in as well. So my thing is, it was nothing to call somebody a nigga or use the term nigga at all around anybody in the South, especially in Atlanta. Let me not say Atlanta. Let me say Georgia. That was fucked up. But ergo, it's 2013. And one of the roaming issues right now, let's say in the DMV, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area, is the name of the Washington Redskins and how it's a derogatory name to Native American people, which also goes into how at one point we were just calling them Indians and now we call them Native Americans because it's proper etiquette to say so and it's politically correct. So my thing is, should we all be penalized for saying things like, Indians or the Redskins still have their names? Like, why isn't it maybe the Washington Cherokees or the Washington Blackfoots or the Washington, I don't know many Indian tribes. I'm sorry, Native American tribes. So it's one of those things where, we use the jargon, we use the same rhetoric ourselves today in 2013, and it is the name of a national football team. So I'm trying to understand what is the big, what makes it different. I understand that, civil rights and the African American experience and the black experience in America has been very much the stain on this country's history, and it forever will be the stain on this country's history. But in the 80s, those things were being said and those things were being done. Not saying they were right at all, but also the term. If we're going to be so PC about what Paula Deen is doing, we need to be PC about everything. We can't just pick our battles based on the fact because she's a white woman and we're black. This is purely being a devil's advocate in this situation. I definitely do not agree with the comments that Paula Deen has said. I think it's really not cool. But it was 30 years ago, in an era where that kind of language was acceptable. Ergo today, calling the Washington Redskins is acceptable behavior. I'm just saying, just try to think of it from both sides. Not saying you have to agree with me. I don't do these videos for you to agree, just to open your mind and see what you may think. Next topic, DOMA. DOMA was repealed. The Defense of Marriage Act. Basically, the Defense of Marriage Act denied homosexual and lesbian Americans and transgendered as well, did not allow them to have the same equal federal benefits that heterosexual couples receive. There are over 1,000 tax breaks that now the homosexuals in states that are gay marriage friendly are now allowed to have. There are also things around state taxes and things like that of that nature, which is a great benefit to the gay community, especially those who want to start families. And the whole estate tax thing was a big mess in the Supreme Court from a former Supreme Court justice herself. For me, I have to say congratulations. I mean, it's a far stride for our country, which I think is amazing. And it's nothing like, you being able to get married and you being able to have the things you need to supply for a family, or whatever you like to do, like in your pursuit of joy and happiness. And I think this is what this country is all built around. My issues concerning the whole gay thing, and not just towards gay people at all, or the gay lifestyle or the LGBT community, but my issue is I don't comprehend in this country how we're supposed to be built off of freedom and the right to pursue our own happiness, but we vehemently judge people for the lifestyles that they live. I think that I will eventually do a video on me and religion and the Bible and how I feel. I am a very passionate Christian. I definitely believe in God and all that good stuff in Jesus Christ. But I feel like at the end of the day, if we're going to have a real split between church and state, let's just keep a real split. Religious convictions have nothing to do with the homosexual experience. And it's very facetious to think that even homosexual Americans and heterosexual Americans are all Christian and all have the same aesthetic and beliefs. So when I look at our politicians or Congress and they are forcing these thoughts into society and that we all should feel this way, or because you are the senator or the representative of your district or state, that you can speak for all of us. As Americans, I think we need to be a little bit more responsible with the people we put into power, and also as well need to speak up when we don't agree. This YouTube channel is basically my forum to do so. I will not always talk about race. I will not always talk about the same things all the time. But this topic for me personally, as a black man in this country, makes me very, aware of the things that are going on. And I need to be aware of these things. I think all of us should be aware of these things. But congratulations. I mean, that's a great stride. I think we're going in the right direction. But we backpedaled. And the backpedaling was parts of the repealing of the Voting Rights Act, particularly the 4th and 5th part of the Voting Rights Act, which I feel like is a major problem and begins a very slippery slope of things. Now, I had to really sit down and really think about the situation because I really wasn't sure about what was being lost here, what was really going on. But once I spoke to a few friends and my boo thing, we all had discussed the ramifications and the implications of what was going on here. Now, you understand the fact of voter ID laws and things like that, and of no early voting, and it was one more thing that North Carolina did. I can't remember the top of my head right now. But it sounds simple. Like, okay, I understand the Supreme Courts feel like we've moved far beyond race and those needs are no longer needed anymore. So we are, we're in a good place, relatively. I think in the climate of having an African American president now, race is much more prominent issue than I think it's ever been in years. And being in my 30s, I've definitely seen the transcendence of how race has began at one point, and then to what race was in the 80s to what race is now. Definitely there are a lot of concerns about African Americans, black people, that people are very vocal about now. And how we all are lumped together is very much an issue for me. I hate to say this, and don't take this at all personally, all black people are not created equal. There are different things that can slow down the process and success of African Americans. And it has a lot to do with where you're from, where you're located, and what you have access to. Being in the Washington, D.C. area, I have access to a lot of things and a lot of information. Not saying that access to information isn't out there. There's a level of accountability that you should have as an American to find out things that you need to know. But for some reason, and this is not just a black thing or just a anybody thing, this is an American thing, that people in our country choose not to really step into those things of the unknown and learn more. You have to take accountability if you want to be aware of what's going on in the world, because these things ultimately always back around and always come back to us or to you or to whoever, or if you're a female or if you're white or if you're Jewish, or if you're Latino, or if you're Hispanic, or if you're African, or wherever you come back, if you're an immigrant, all these things eventually come back around to us. So my thing is, you need to be aware about the things that are going on, especially like even with women, different things. Now, this is my issue with the whole Voting Rights Act thing being repealed. It's a slippery slope of fuckery and nonsense, and I think people don't really realize it. Now, yeah, I get the whole not having your ID and you need to have your ID to vote. That's fine. But what if they start turning this bullshit into like, oh, you need your driver's license, and you need your birth certificate, you need your social security card. You know, voter oppression is very much something that happened in the 60s, which was very obvious by those literacy tests and different things like that. So they can find different ways to subjugate the vote. They already have started realigning the districts and doing things. Now, let's talk about this Voting Rights Act thing real quick, because my thoughts are running together, so you have to forgive me. I have to spit through this shit really quick, because I hate how long my videos have been lately. There in the Voting Rights Act, it basically wrote that these specific states, now that I can remember off the top of my head right now, specific southern states had to have federal clearance from the federal government to make changes in their voting laws. Now, since that part of the act is gone, what are they doing? Immediately, they're switching things around. And no one clearly sees anything wrong with this. I mean, some people do see something wrong with this, of course. But I don't know if it's just me, I don't know if it's y'all, but I clearly see something wrong with this. Then also as well, they've stopped early voting. Now this is a hypothetical situation, but it's a real situation that could possibly happen. What if on the next midterm or presidential election that, let's say North Carolina for instance, I'm gonna target North Carolina. North Carolina, forgive me, but you're gonna be the target today. That they was basically like, voting is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's the only time you can vote. Now, voting really affects people who are in low-income situations. Because, like, you have families or you have jobs when you have to work, you may not have time to go out to go get a driver's license or things like that. I think it's imperative. And I think me personally, if you're able-bodied, there's no excuse for you not to have a driver's license. The only time I really feel a level of understanding is when there's old people involved. You're not working, so why would you have an ID? You're probably not driving, why would you have an ID? You basically are sitting at home chilling, coveting grandchildren, and you are collecting Social Security. So I understand when it comes down to how this affects older people. I also understand when it comes down to college students who have to vote outside of their states because they are away at college or whatever's going on. So they may not have proper ID with them. They may just have their student IDs and they're not going anywhere on campus but, you know, to campus and to work, and that's it. And they may work on campus or they may not work at all. I don't really know the background of everything. I do believe that everybody should carry an ID just for the sake of, my mom always told me carry an ID in case they find your body. That's just my mother. Love her to death. But back to this whole hypothetical situation of the 7 a.m. to the 7 p.m. voting times. Now, what if you are in line at 6 o'clock? The line is already out the door and way around the corner because there's no early voting allowed. So you're already backed around the corner. So then it hits 7. They say no more voting. This is my concern about the whole repealing of the parts of the Voting Rights Act. And my thing, which is even more nerve-wracking, is that not only are they, and I understand appealing part of state law or local law, I understand that, but they're dipping into the real actual Constitution of America, where it also holds our civil rights, our rights, the rights of women. None of these rights have been in our country for more than a century. And please do not take this personally when I say this. The only people in this country that have not been affected by anything in this country are Anglo-Saxon men. Everybody else has felt some form of discrimination or had to fight for their rights to some degree. Relatively, all of us have. I think I'm even more baffled when I look at politicians who have non-Anglo-Saxon and non-male backgrounds, and they are for these things. Ultimately, your you know, I don't want to say ancestors like we're all, you know, 100 years old, but your grandpappy and your grandmammy basically fought for your rights, or were in the slew of going on with your rights and make sure that you had your rights, or did the right things to perpetuate the success that we have today as a country. And my thing is, when we make these decisions, especially with the Voting Rights Act, that's backpedaling all the way to things that we've already had to fight for, and now we have to fight for them again. I think this is a harebrained idea. I don't know what the Supreme Court is thinking by making this decision. I think it's fuckery, me personally, but it's a slippery slope. Let me help y'all with a visual. They are basically putting a proverbial tree with a noose hanging from it in front of us, and basically like, some of y'all are next. And this is how I look at it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not somebody who thinks that that these things ultimately will happen in the immediate future, but in the long term view of things, these things possibly could happen where we could be back down to zero. People don't realize that the Ku Klux Klan, I hate saying that word because it's like a tongue twister, the KKK and Jim Crow were basically manifested from African Americans getting their rights. Now, please do not think at all that I'm anti-white people or anti-anything. But I'm just talking about just the era of the time of the things that were going on. Basically, these group of men and these radical men were so upset by the fact that my ancestors had rights, they had to make up their own set of laws below the Mason-Dixon. And then also to persecute and hang us. And so nothing wrong with it. And for a long time, these things went on. And I'm pretty sure there are hundreds of stories that people don't even know about. So if they felt empowered to do this thing, what makes you think that these things can't happen again? They may not happen in the same way of a literal tree and us hanging from a noose, but the proverbial one that's going to happen of us losing our rights as women, as men, well, as black men, as people of color, as, you know, as transgender people, whoever you are that's not an Anglo-Saxon man, you're basically in a line of fire. And rather than all of us who are standing so divided against this issue, we all should be working together to get to the greater goal, which is a society where everybody's tolerated and everybody's accepted and everybody's loved. But I feel like the Voting Rights Act is the beginning of the sealing of the coffin that will damn all of us in this country. I know this video sounds way past crazy and not part of what people really expect from me, people who know me personally, but I really sat and stewed on this for a few days. But grand scheme of things, what are your thoughts? What do you think about the Voting Rights Act? What do you think about DOMA? What do you think about Paula Deen? I'd like to hear your insight. So comment below and, you know, let me know. So until next time, peace.